Terraria is a great game. In fact, some may say it's one of the greatest. If you've played the game, you know this goes without saying. But if personal opinions don't suit your fancy,
That's my opinion!
just look at the facts. Terraria is the 15th best-selling game of all time. It is the most positively reviewed game on Steam with over 1 million positive reviews, and the game, to this day, has at least 25,000 active players daily. It is without question a resounding success by the developers of the game Relogic, and it is my favorite game ever made. But why is Terraria so successful in a world where games are flopping left and right? More importantly, was it always like this? Well, today, I'll be answering these questions for you so you don't have to do any research. So sit back, buckle up, because we're about to head right in. The story of this game starts all the way back in the year 2011, when a small indie developer studio by the name of Relogic decided to launch their little game known as Terraria. And it was big. Not even a week after its release, the game was already the 5th most played game on Steam with around 38,000 players on launch. And while a lot of people, Minecraft fans, were claiming the game was just 2D Minecraft, it was clear that there was a market for a 2D exploration-based survival game where you fight bosses and build houses to trap NPCs forever and enslave them for their service. There was just one problem with the game back then. The game lacked content. Lots of it. To put it into perspective how bare bones the game was on launch, more than half the current content in the game was non-existent back then. For the people who have played this game, just know that hard mode was non-existent and many of the current items were also not there. Say the game felt a bit underwhelming in that regard is a bit of an understatement, but it was otherwise a perfectly fun and serviceable game, so a player base of around 10,000 players stuck around.
What are you doing? What are you doing?
Nothing. Me? Just hanging around.
Then, in December of the same year, the game received its first big update, 1.1, and it was a big one. The update added 4 new bosses and a slew of items, enemies, and you get the point. It was pretty big. As a result, the player count spiked to over 50,000 players during the first 2 months of the update. After the players got their share of the new update, the player count slowly died back down to its loyal following of around 10,000 monthly players, and it remained that way until September of 2013. When you guessed it, the game's second big update, 1.2, dropped, this time adding even more content than the last time. Like with the last update, the player count spiked again, but this time it spiked to a whopping 100,000 players. You heard that right. The game went from averaging 10k players a month to 100k in the first month of the update. As everyone finished going through the new content, player counts started going down again, but this time it stayed at around the 20k player mark. This continued until the game's next big update, 1.3, on June 2015, where player counts spiked to around 150,000 for 2 months straight. As the game received update after update, more and more people decided to give it a chance, realized it's actually a masterpiece, and stuck around. By this point, the game was basically a complete game with a nice sense of progression, a final boss, that being this ugly guy, and the player counts reflect this by being constantly at around the 30k mark.
Good.
By now, Terraria was shaping up to be one of, if not the most popular game within its genre, and it was by many people considered a masterpiece with heaps of content to keep your little monkey brains engaged, and it sold well, but nothing too unheard of. However, there was to be one more big update to the game, one which would change the game's status from above average success to downright stardom. To say this update is big is a complete disservice. This, ladies and gentlemen, is Terraria 1.4. This update was huge. New bosses, a complete revamp of one of the game's classes, new enemies, biomes, weapons, and so much more that'll probably get jaw arthritis were I to actually name everything this update added or changed. It is easily one of the biggest content updates I've ever seen in a video game, and the content is not the only thing that's huge here, because we haven't even talked about the player count. The update somehow managed to push the game's all-time peak, which at this point was 159,171 players, to an astronomical 489,886 players. In the 2 years following the release of Terraria 1.4, Terraria sales went from 30 million copies sold to 44 million.
You can't keep getting away with it! He can't keep getting away with it! He won't.
In just 2 years, Terraria had managed to increase its total sales by nearly half the amount achieved in its first decade. It is truly mind-blowing what this update did to this game, as even 4 years after the update, the player base is still constantly hovering around 40 to 60 peak monthly players. Anyway, talking about the game's player count aside, you should now be a complete expert on this game's past, so it's time to talk about why I think Terraria got and still finds success in a world where companies can't go 2 seconds without making bad decisions.
Oh, no.
Now, with what I told you about the game, you may be thinking that the success comes from some sort of secret sauce ingredient that Relogic know about, and while I do think there are some aspects of the game that make it better than other games, I personally think it comes from the fact that Relogic aren't complete brain-dead retards. I mean, the amount of incompetence in big modern game studios is insane.
That's quite big.
You have companies not even being able to add a scoreboard to their games, EA. I could rant about modern game developer studios all day, but for the sake of this video, I shall continue. Like I said, there are some factors that I think make Terraria better than other games.
Look at this dude. Wait till you see the. No, 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 no. Look at the top of his head.
So let's move on then and talk about them, shall we? The first factor that I want to look into is the game's price. In a world where games can cost an arm and a leg to play, you can pick up a copy of Terraria for a whopping $10.
You serious?
That's not even the best part. You see, this game is a one-time purchase, meaning no microtransactions. All updates are also completely free of charge. You pay once, and you get everything the game has to offer. You barely see that anymore nowadays, as microtransactions slowly drag your already declining bank account into the minus, and extra content DLC is becoming more expensive than the game itself. This alone is reason enough to give the game a try, as you don't need to give out a fortune just to try it. And if you don't like it, well, it is what it is. I guess you're not drinking that Starbucks coffee later. Making the game a one-time purchase and making content updates free is such a simple thing that we've unfortunately gotten unaccustomed to, as developers keep hammering on expensive DLC and microtransactions to their games. I think this small thing single-handedly gave the game like half its current players, as people would see the game's success, see it's only $10, give it a try, and thanks to the other factors that I'll be discussing shortly, realize how good this game is and stuck around. So we've talked about the story of this game's success, and about why people would be enticed to give it a chance. But why exactly did people actually stick around? Well, I think that's due to 3 main reasons. first one should be the obvious if you've been paying attention to this video so far. I hope you've been paying attention to the video, or else
I'm watching you.
the first factor is the constant, and I mean constant support from Relogic. Relogic is so passionate about working on and updating the game that they're still releasing big updates for a game that should have ended 4 years ago. The nickname given by Relogic to update 1.4 was Journey's End, as in the literal end of Terraria's journey. They stated themselves that it was going to be the final content update to the game. However, I remember at least one more big update after 1.4 where they revamped most of the melee class, the biggest class in the game. With such omnipresent support, it's no wonder the game does so well. It's not only the amount of support, but also the quality of it that makes Relogic stand out in modern times. Like previously mentioned in the video, when they release content updates, they are absolutely huge, so you get plenty of content to enjoy.
Ooh, yeah, baby! That's what I've been waiting for. That's what it's all about. Woo!
Speaking of huge amounts of content, the second reason why people love this game is the complete acceptance and embrace of modding. If you ask me, this game has one of the biggest modding community, rivaling Skyrim in that regard. You can easily spend hundreds if not thousands of hours just playing through different mods. There are thousands of mods ranging from small quality of life mods to gigantic content mods that could be considered games all by themselves. But that on its own doesn't really stand out as much. I mean, there are plenty of games with hundreds, thousands of mods. But what Terraria does different is the way you access these mods. Take the previously named Skyrim. In order to mod the game, you have to install Vortex Mod Manager, install the mod you want, install the game engines like SKC that you need to run certain mods, and oh well, I guess you're not playing the game with Sonic the Hedgehog as your follower.
Why are we still here? Just to suffer?
In Terraria, you just install the game manager and you're good to go. No random mods you need to install to serve as pseudo game engines for your mods. No nonsense. It's just you, the mod browser, and the install button. Even installing the mod manager itself is really easy. You just search for it on Steam and click the install button. Even a toddler could do it. The decision to fully embrace mods was brilliant, as it allows you to completely negate Terraria's biggest downside. After you beat the final boss, it kinda just ends. This brings me to my final point, which is that the game is just plain good. If you've ever played Terraria before, you know this game is good. Everything works together perfectly to bring you a complete and fun experience. The progression is absolutely amazing and never gets stale. This is because the game constantly pushes the difficulty boundary further and further, forcing you to get off your ass and explore the world in search of better loot. Speaking of, the world in this game is genius. It strikes the perfect blend between giving you the most busted items in the game and leaving you more broke than a college student. The game heavily rewards exploration, as every chest you come across could have an extremely useful item that would help you out immensely. Then again, you could also just find 10 chests with flare guns in a row. I swear to God, the amount of times I find this godforsaken items in my chest is unreal, and I swear bad things will happen if it should continue. Where was I? Right, the classes in this game are also just stupefying. It is a simple melee ranged mage and summoner type deal, but the simplicity of it makes it super easy to understand what is meant for what, And plus, there is something about the simple 4-way split that makes it so much fun and less niche to play. Not every RPG game with classes needs 15 different races and classes and stuff like that. Less is more sometimes. Also, like I've mentioned previously in this video, Relogic has spent a lot of time tweaking and perfecting these classes to be the best they could ever be. Best of all, Terraria was and still is a complete game. In modern times, game studios have been able to get away with questionable amounts of slack. From games being released with numerous game-breaking bugs, to missing outright critical content. Admittedly, this isn't as much a direct result of Relogic putting more dedication in or being more skilled as it is a pure result of how radically different the game industry and gamer standards were back then versus now. So we've gone over the history of this game and also ran through the reasons as to why I think people like this game so much. But what will the game become in the future? Will it still be as popular as ever, or will it drift into the abyss as a dying corpse? I honestly can't say whether this game will still be popular in the future, but either way, one thing's for certain: the game will be remembered for a long time after its final days. Maybe not as much by the general gamer out there, as you know, kids only care about the very top, your Fortnites and your Minecrafts and so on, but it has definitely left a mark on any of the 44 million people who have bought and played this complete masterpiece of a game. Okay, on second thought, only 86% of people have the achievement for actually cutting down a tree. The first thing you do in the game. So maybe it won't be remembered by every single living soul that bought this game, but for those people who have the intelligence high enough to realize that the first thing you should do when being spawned in a world surrounded by trees with an axe in your inventory is to cut down those trees, the game will definitely leave a mark. To conclude this video, if by any point in this video you've been thinking to yourself whether you should buy this game or not, just listen to what I'm about to say. Buy this game! This game is a complete and utter masterpiece, like I said in this video numerous times already, and is worth every single penny spent. Heck, I'd even spend $100 on it if I could. Seriously, this game has something for everyone. Like action, this game has tons of bosses and enemies to bang your head against. Want to chill out? Just build a house. Heck, build 10 houses. Want to explore the world? The game has 3 different world size options, and the largest one is absolutely gigantic. And if I haven't convinced you throughout this entire video to buy this game, I'm sure this will.